Starting off this countdown, we have absolving sins with money. Basically, back in the day, the Catholic Church told people that they could absolve their sins and get a ticket to heaven if they just paid them. Like, you were paying the church for forgiveness. Sorry, that's not how these things work. It also got to the point where people were paying for future sins. Not only that, they claimed that for a fee, relatives could get their deceased loved ones out of purgatory. And people fell for this all. Not only that, but poor people thought that they were screwed. They're like, if we sin, it's over. We can't afford to pay to get our sins forgiven. I wouldn't be surprised if the rich went around committing crimes and killing people, then being like, here's some cash, I'm all good now, thanks. In our ninth spot, we have imprisoning Galileo. In 1663, Galileo was like, science is greater than God. He also said that the sun was the center of the universe and claimed that the earth moved around it. I mean, he was onto something there, but just, he was slightly off. Anyways, the church didn't like these claims because it conflicted with the teachings of the church, so they imprisoned him. He was imprisoned in his home for years. I mean, they threatened him with torture, imprisonment, and even being burned at the stake, so let's just say he got off easy compared to those other punishments. It wasn't until 350 years later did the church be like, okay, yes, we agree, Galileo was onto something. Moving on to number 8, we have cutting funding. For years, the church gave thousands of dollars to a non-profit organization, Compañeros, that would help Hispanic immigrants get access to healthcare, among other things. That was until they found out that Compañeros supported a gay and lesbian rights group. So the church cut the funding to this company for their connection to the LGBTQ2S+ community. They're not the only group that the church has done this to, though. No, apparently, and I quote, since 2010, 9 groups from across the country have lost financing from the campaign because of conflicts with Catholic principles. Moving on to number 7, we have the gay clergy member. In 2018, a secret Catholic group came forward claiming they had information all about their clergy member, Monsignor Jeffrey Burrell. They claimed that he was using the gay male dating app Grindr and would visit gay bars weekly. Now, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with being gay. What's wrong is shaming this poor man and outing him, and the poor man had to resign. Obviously, this is something the Catholic Church doesn't want us to know. Why? Because they say homosexual acts is immoral and contrary to the natural law. They also say homosexual tendencies are objectively disordered. And they also preach celibacy. So having a clergy member that is gay is highly controversial for them, and they tried to hide it. A lot of Catholics were outraged when word got out. Scariest part is how they found out about Jeffrey in the first place. Apparently the group was tracking his movements based on the apps he was using. Pretty terrifying and also very, very wrong. Moving on to number 6, we have Joan of Arc. Turns out that the church wasn't the biggest fan of Joan of Arc. In fact, at one point she was pretty much the Catholic Church's #1 public enemy. Long story short, she believed that God was speaking to her and had told her to start an uprising to get the English out of France. By doing so, she pissed off some high-powered Catholics who wanted her gone. So they decided to put her up for trial. But legit, they had no evidence against her, but they were like, whatever, fake it till you make it, right? So they just accused her of heresy with no evidence, cause it was a lie. And on top of that, they denied her counsel, which was against the church's rules. They just hated her and wanted to get rid of her. I think there were like 70+ charges brought up against her. One of them being for wearing men's clothing, in which she was burned at the stake for. In 1431, in front of a crowd of thousands of people, they lit her on fire for wearing male clothing. But it was discovered after her death that she never even did this. Literally, they killed an innocent woman. Why? Because they were probably intimidated by her. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the slaying of women. Pope Innocent VII wasn't innocent at all. In fact, he was terrified of witches. He said that they were real and a huge threat, so he created a huge witch hunt. He dispatched his men to Germany to try witches, and due to the pressure he put on them, countless innocent women were killed after being accused of being witches. All because Pope Innocent was paranoid as hell. Not only that, but in 1487 a book was written all about these witches. It said that this book promoted burning them at the stake stake, and that influenced a number of killings. Plus, the book was just filled with lies, like saying these women would stop cows from producing milk and would ride on broomsticks in the air. It's just truly messed up and spread misinformation and paranoia. In our fourth spot, we have the burning of the dead. Apparently, the church holds grudges because 43 years after John Wycliffe passed away, they had his body dug up and burned. Now, let me explain how it got to this point. So, John saw fault in the Roman Catholic Church and saw how it was corrupt. So he believed that people should worship God and Jesus according to the Bible, not according to the popes and their bishops and priests, because people are corrupt. But the Bible is not. He also believed that people should interpret the Bible for themselves and not how other people tell them to interpret it. Well, the church did not like this at all. So when he passed away, they ordered all his books to be burned. They also ordered for his body to be unburied. And for some reason, it took them years to get this all done. So 43 years later, his body was finally unburied and then torched, and then his ashes were just thrown into the river. In our third spot, we have the misuse of power. Just this year, it was discovered that the French clergy had taken advantage of over 200,000 young individuals since the 1950s. It is absolutely disgusting. The height of this happened between the 1950s to the 1970s. That's when most of the cases were discovered. Then there was a resurgence of cases in the early 1990s. And obviously the Catholic Church doesn't want anyone to know about this. In fact, it's obvious that the church was turning a blind eye to the perpetrators. They were more focused on protecting themselves and their reputation. They did not care for the victims at all. A report said, and I quote, "The Catholic Church's immediate reaction was to protect itself as an institution, and it has shown complete, even cruel indifference to those having suffered abuse." Like I said, it's absolutely disgusting. Moving on to number 2, we have the number of priests. In January of 2002, it was discovered that 234 priests have had allegations of sexual misconduct made against them in the last 50 years. You heard me, 234. That just makes me sick to my stomach. These individuals are using their title and control to take advantage of others. Some of the victims did file lawsuits against a number of dioceses and got multiple $1-million settlements in some cases. But that still does not take away their trauma and their PTSD. Even though the Catholic Church held a worldwide summit to talk about all this, it wasn't that effective, as priests were still caught taking advantage of individuals years later. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Inquisitions. It should not be forgotten that the Catholic Church would routinely arrest and torture Jews, Muslims, along with other individuals of different religions. They literally were like, convert to our beliefs or be executed, it's your choice. They were given a warning. They were told to vacate the area, and the people that stayed were arrested, and then either forced to convert or be executed. Sometimes they even tortured them before execution. They used branding, would hang them from their thumbs or toes, and would break their bones. After that, that's when they were strangled and then burned at the stake.
Cathedral Ghosts scares us in at number 10. This creepy video was captured at the Lincoln Cathedral in England. First of all, the exterior of this church looks like it could be the set of a horror movie, and what possessed this person to go to church at night? I have no idea. Well, it's a little bit too dark and windy for my liking. Well, things took a turn for the worse when they stumbled across this. Well, take a look for yourself. Okay, did I see that right? It looks like a face is protruding from the wall, and then all of a sudden it disappears when the cameraman went to investigate it. I'd be getting the heck out of there, and I'd probably never return to that church ever again. I'd probably have to make a pit stop to another church because I have to do some Hail Marys after seeing that ghost head. A creepy art project is up next at number 9. The St. George Church was left abandoned after the roof collapsed. The locals in the area saw this as a bad omen, so they didn't even want to repair the church. But I guess an art student took it upon themselves to fill in the pews with creepy ghost figures instead. Take a look. Okay, this is not okay in my books. Actually, this might be the scariest art project that I've ever seen. I feel like if the church wasn't haunted before, well, it definitely is now. A shadowy figure is up next at number 8. This extremely scary picture was taken inside of a Catholic church somewhere over in Poland. Everyone there was celebrating a first communion, but the party was crashed by the shadowy figure who was seen creeping between the aisles. It's quite possible that this is just the result of a camera malfunctioning, but the thing is, are you willing to bet your life on that? I know I'm not. Insane insect infestation crawls onto our list at number 7. I get it, sometimes older buildings have an insect problem. You might see the occasional ant or centipede. You know, I can forgive that, but what I can't forgive is this. Is this real life right now? Is this the only church in town? Why are people content with this? How the heck can you be singing at a time like this? I mean, you all need to bathe in some holy water and all stand in front of a strong fan to get all of those termites off of you. This is not okay. I'm pretty sure this church needs an exorcism and an exterminator at the same time. Number 6, the man with glowing eyes. During a service at a church, someone accidentally captured this picture of a man with some pretty unsettling eyes. Some people are even saying that this creature isn't even human, while others think that he's wearing glasses and it's just the light reflecting off of them. I honestly don't know what to believe. He kind of looks like a gnome from hell, and those people in the church might be in a whole lot of trouble. But did you guys also notice there's a weird floating object hovering over the guy next to the gnome? I mean, what the heck is going on in this church? I think everyone inside needs to be blessed. Bringing us to number 5, we have a ghost spirit caught on camera. A paranormal investigation team were exploring an old abandoned church in England, when they stumbled across this eerie sight. Okay, let's play that again, but in slow motion. As you can see, a ghostly figure passes by one of the windows, and it looks like they're wearing a long white dress or robe of some sort. This church dates back to 1135, so it's very possible that it's had its fair share of scary ghost encounters. Next up on our list, number 4, we have a Jesus statue caught moving. Okay, pay close attention to the statue's eyes, because what I'm about to show you guys is gonna happen pretty quickly. Okay, let's play that again, but in slow motion. How the heck did the guy filming this have no reaction whatsoever? I'm completely traumatized, and I wasn't even there for that. I feel like Jesus was staring into my soul, and he didn't even like what he saw, so he just closed his eyes. This statue of Jesus Christ is located inside of the church in Mexico, and since this video was released, thousands of people have been going to this church to watch the statue move for themselves. But I'm pretty sure a moving statue would just deter me from ever visiting it. A ghost makes an appearance at a shrine, and this takes us to number 3. This next clip I'm about to show you guys was taken in a church over in Ireland. This church houses the national shrine of St. Oliver Plunkett, who was an Irish saint who was condemned to death. And that was although he was completely innocent. So you're gonna see his cell door and possibly St. Oliver Plunkett himself. Watch.
This is the door of the cell in Newgate prison, where St. Oliver Plunkett was in prison for 8 months.
He's a very interesting figure, because he was...
Okay, no, you're not crazy. I think I saw him as well. So it could be possible that his spirit is still attached to the cell door, or could something more sinister be going on here? Well, you know what? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Jesus is caught moving again, and this takes us to number 2. Seriously, what is up with all these moving Jesus statues? Stop it! I'm really not okay with this, but you guys clicked on this video, so you know what? Here's another scary clip for you.
Reconozcan al Señor Jesús como el Hijo amado que el Padre ha enviado para salvación de todos.
Okay, what did I just watch? This is the reason why I don't go to church. There's too much scariness happening there. I think I'm developing an irrational fear of Jesus statues. I thought church was supposed to be a safe place, but instead of being comforted, I'm being tormented. Dark shadowy figure creeps onto our list at number 1. Well, take a look at this picture right here. It looks like the church might have a demon problem, maybe multiple demons. I don't know what's worse, those termites that we just saw or this devilish demon. And I can't even make out what this thing is. It looks like he has really long arms and legs. Maybe he's a spider demon. Well, whatever he is, I never want to see him in the flesh because I honestly don't think that I would be walking out of that church alive.
Starting off this countdown, we have the nuns. In 2019, Pope Francis for the first time addressed the horrors that happened to nuns in the Catholic Church. Priests and bishops and other church officials have been taking advantage of nuns for ages. This was an ongoing problem for years and the church wasn't doing anything about it. They were too busy focusing on covering up even bigger scandals and issues. Over the years, more and more nuns have come forward saying that they were victims. Some were afraid to speak up because they were dependent on the church and literally couldn't leave. Although Pope Francis acknowledged what happened, it's unclear the steps they are taking to prevent it in the future. In our 9th spot today, we have the Knights Templar. So Philip IV of France, as well as the Catholic Church, are directly responsible for torturing and executing innocent individuals back in the 14th century. Basically, Philip did not like the Templars in Spain and wanted to get rid of them. So he sent out his men to round them up, arrest them, and then imprison them. He then accused the innocent men of terrible crimes like sodomy, heresy, and renouncing Christ. Any of those crimes were punishable by the death penalty. Again, they were innocent, he just wanted to get rid of the Templar order. He then would torture the Templars so that they would confess. He would use a rack to stretch out their shoulders until they dislocated, or he would have their private parts smashed. This was all done while the church knew that the men were innocent. In our 8th spot, we have Pope Pius XII. In this case, it's what the church didn't do. According to a recent discovery of archives, Pope Pius XII was fully aware what the Nazis were doing during the Holocaust and chose to remain silent. He knew of the mass executions of the Jewish individuals and he dismissed this all. In fact, he said that they were unable to confirm the crimes, so that's why he didn't speak up against them. It says a lot when they refuse to publicly condemn the Nazis. In fact, apparently his silence was so that the Germans didn't come for them, so that the church could always be successful. They were just caring about themselves and not about the thousands of innocent individuals being killed. Moving on to number 7, we have the violent murders. Back in 1095, Pope Urban II gave rise to the Crusades during his reign as the head of the Catholic Church. He called all Christians in Europe to go to war against the Muslims. And it was not pretty. It literally said that they killed so many Muslims that the street ran with blood. And this was only the beginning. Waves of crusades continued until 1396, and although Catholics were not the only religion involved in mass violence, Pope Urban got it all started. And it was a violent time to say the least. Everyone was killed, no matter their age. Some people's heads were even put on sticks and then they would carry them around to scare others. Like, that is hella messed up. In our 6th spot today, we have William Tyndale. During the 16th century, William took it upon himself to translate the Bible into vernacular English so that more people were able to read it. But for some reason, the Catholic Church did not like him doing this, which is weird. Wouldn't they want the Bible translated so more people would become followers of it? Anyways, William actually had to go into hiding because the church was coming for him. They even burned copies of the Bible that were being smuggled around Europe. In the end, William was captured, tried for heresy, and then burned at the stake. He literally did nothing wrong. Want to know something even more messed up? Years later, the church was like, ah yes, let's translate the Bibles. They then turned to William's translations and used a whole lot of it, and then they never even apologized. Ridiculous. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Pope Alexander VI. So, Pope Alexander VI was said to be one of the worst popes in history. Why? Well, he is known for something known as the Banquet of Chestnuts. He basically invited 50 women over and told them to strip for him. Then he threw chestnuts on the floor and forced the women to get on their hands and knees and just surround their feet like animals. To make matters worse, he told the men that he invited that he would give the man who could get it on with the most women jewelry or fine clothes. So then they were all fighting over these women. This guy was hella corrupt and sick. Not only that, but he liked to watch horses get it on. That is disgusting. In our fourth spot today, we have the cover-ups. So a lot of shady stuff has gone down with the Catholic Church. There's no denying that. For years, the church knew all about the scandals surrounding the leaders of the church and how they would take advantage of innocent individuals, but they kept brushing this issue under the rug. Then in 2001, the Vatican told them that any cases should be reported directly to the Vatican hierarchy. Years later, they still weren't dealing with any of these cases. In 2004, instead of getting rid of the priests in question, they just moved them to different churches or different countries. So that didn't really stop them. They just had a new set of people that they could take advantage of. They literally cared more about their priests than the victims. Moving on to number 3, we have the grooming. Over the years, people of power at the church have groomed a number of young individuals. Today, I'm sharing the story of Michael. When he was young, he was groomed and forced into doing things he didn't want to do. One of the brothers of the church would bring him to Broadway shows and movies. This was all part of the grooming process. Then when he entered the congregation of Christian brothers, that's when he was abused and groomed by 4 or 5 different men. This is absolutely disgusting, and of course the church would do any and everything to make sure Michael's story or others didn't get out. In our second spot, we have the funding. CBC News and the Globe and Mail recently obtained files that expose the Catholic Church for spending some of the $79 million that it agreed to pay residential school survivors. That's right, they spent money that was meant to go to survivors of their residential schools. But instead, they took most of that money and put it into things like their Bible study group or for their personal lawyers and unapproved loans. Whereas other churches, including the Anglican, United, and Presbyterian Church, paid the full amount of compensation owed to the survivors without an issue. But the Catholic Church took the money and used it for themselves, which is disgusting since they played the biggest role in residential schools and the horrors that took place there. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the unmarked graves. Earlier this year, thousands of unmarked graves have been found by residential schools across Canada. Residential schools were funded by the federal government and run by the churches. They would tear families apart, taking the children and forcing them into these schools in order to assimilate them, and they were stripped of their native language and culture and traditions. While in the schools, they were treated terribly. They were neglected, tortured, and even murdered. In these unmarked graves, thousands of innocent young individuals were found. This went on for 120 years. Tens of thousands of Indigenous children were sent to these schools. Thousands never returned home. Currently, the grounds are being searched for unmarked graves at the Mohawk Institute, and soon more and more residential school grounds will be explored. And sadly, we all know more bones are going to be unearthed. It's a very sad and tragic reality.